So, the Shakespeare anthology puzzle is pretty much insane. Okay, well, it's not insane on normal, but it is insane on hard. You might remember that at the beginning of the Let's Play, some 20 minutes ago, I picked normal riddle difficulty. And if you pick hard riddle difficulty, you are probably a masochist, because some of the puzzles get totally bonkers, and this is one of them. It's probably one of the hardest puzzles of the entire series because it requires pretty extensive knowledge of Shakespeare, obviously. And not the kind of stuff that you learn in high school either. You have to know which of Shakespeare's anthology books corresponds to which of his stories in real life. So, I'm going to walk you through the puzzle now just to show you how crazy it is. And I might do this for other hard mode puzzles in the future, because they're all pretty fun. I didn't want to include this in the actual video, so it's going in the back in the extra section, which is why I chose to play on normal riddle difficulty. So, I'm going to show you just how nuts it is. Buckle in! This is a long one. So, first I'll run you through the poem, and which story each line refers to. Ahem, here goes my best Shakespeare. In here is a tragedy, art thou player or audience? Be as it may, the end doth remain, all go only toward death. The first words at thy left hand, a false lunacy, a madly dancing man, hearing unhearable words, drawn to a beloved's grave, and there, mayhap, true madness at last. So this first line refers to Hamlet, which is in Anthology 4. Basically, a false lunacy refers to how Hamlet pretended to be crazy to garner attention. In the play, he is spoken to by the ghost of his father, and that is what the quote-unquote unhearable words are, because there is a moment where he speaks to the ghost, and the ghost says stuff back, and people think he's crazy. Which, again, you know, refers to the false lunacy. And at the funeral of his beloved, Ophelia, he got into a fight between himself and Laertes. So that's the first verse. It's one of the more obtuse ones, I think. But don't worry, it's gonna get more obscure. Almost everybody knows about Hamlet. So here's the second verse. As did this one, playing at death, find true death at the last. Killing a nameless lover, she pierced a heart ripped by sorrow. So the second verse refers to Romeo and Juliet, which is in Anthology 1. This one is probably the most obvious, with, you know, parting is such sweet sorrow being a line straight from Romeo and Juliet itself. The nameless lover refers to Romeo, and the passage where he talks about, you know, what's in a name, you know, all that stuff. And the phrase playing at death refers to how Juliet faked her death by using a sleeping potion, which resulted in the end of the play. So if you know which anthology this verse and the previous one refer to, you can probably just guess the rest of the puzzle, but... Okay, let me rephrase. You could probably guess the rest of the puzzle if that was all you had to do. Is just put them in the right order. So there's hundreds of combinations with what you have to do at the end, so let's just keep going. Doth lie invite truth? Doth verily but wear the mask of falsehood? Ah, thou pitiful, thou miserable ones. The third verse refers to Macbeth, which is in Anthology 3. People probably would know this one too if you've taken like a class on, you know, classic English literature. This verse probably is the most vague, I guess. It doesn't refer to any specific characters like the previous one does, but it talks about the themes of Macbeth, where Macbeth gains the royal throne by lying and deceiving people, and in the end he pays for it, you see. And that one is probably that one is probably the one you'll have to guess on, even if you do know Shakespeare. But the last verse gets kind of close too. So the fourth one, still amidst lies, though the end cometh not, wherefore yearn for death? Wilt thou attend to thy beloved? Truth and lies, life and death, a game of turning white to black and black to white. This one actually, this one, if you think about it a little bit, it kind of makes more sense. If you've ever heard of the classic board game Othello, you know that this, based on how the game is played, turning white to black and black to white, refers to Othello, which is in Anthology 5, which is what the board game is named after. So this verse speaks of truth and lies, which is also a big theme in Othello. It refers to... It's sort of it's mostly a puzzle about the board game. That's the biggest hint. But also, it talks about deception, which is... it kind of refers to the character Desdemona and her prominent place in the play with her adultery and scheming. So the fifth verse is the last one that refers to a poem, but you might notice that we still have 2 verses left. So it's not over till it's over. Is not a silence brimming with love more precious than flattery, a peaceful slumber preferred to a throne besmirched with blood? This one, okay, even if you do know Shakespeare, you probably have no idea what that is referring to. So, not a lot of people, a lot of people have read Romeo and Juliet, a lot of people have at least seen Hamlet, a lot of people know about Macbeth, some people know about Othello, but not a lot of people know about King Lear, which is in Anthology 2. The verse refers to Lear's daughter, Cordelia is her name, sorry, who loves her father, but never really tells him that much, only letting her actions speak instead, which Lear is basically oblivious to. Her 2 other sisters are basically the opposite, which is basically what that talks about. They offer false flattery to him. They tell him that they love him and they care, but they don't really mean it. And so Cordelia basically ends up with her affection going unrecognized, while the other 2 speak with words. And that verse refers to what the play asks, which is it more important to tell someone you love them than to show it? So now we have 1 play for each anthology. And I wish that was the end of the puzzle. I wish you had to just put them in order. But no. So from left to right now, we have, in the proper order, 4, 1, 5, 2, 3. But that's not counting the second to last verse. So here we go. 1 vengeful man spilled blood for 2. 2 youths shed tears for 3. 3 witches disappeared thusly, and only the 4 keys remain. Ah, but verily, in here is a tragedy. Art thou player or audience? There is nothing which cannot become a puppet of fate or an onlooker peering into the cage. The code is only 4 digits, and we have 5 books. So, 1 vengeful man spilled blood for 2 refers to Hamlet, and that the book's number has to be multiplied by 2. So, Hamlet is book number 4, and we have to multiply it by 2, so that gives us 8. 2 youths shed tears for 3, of course, refers to Romeo and Juliet, which is book number 1. And I guess you could figure out, based on the first hint, that you have to multiply that by 3, and 1 times 3 is 3, so, well. The last one, 3 witches disappeared thusly, and only the 4 keys remain. In Macbeth, a trio of witches appear as minor characters, and if you know that, and you know that they disappear, you know that you have to skip number 3, which is at the end of the sequence, which makes the final code 8352. Boy, I really like this puzzle. I think this puzzle is one of the most interesting, because if you don't know very much about Shakespeare, you are never going to complete this puzzle, because like I said, there are hundreds of combinations and you have to do that extra math to be able to solve the puzzle and get the code to the door. And it's really cool. I appreciate that they put in such brain-bending puzzles. There's one later on that I think is equally as cool.